I'm Frances, co-founder of Quay Acceleration, and welcome to our Women in Blazers podcast series. We're doing a little bit different from our normal podcast episodes in order to highlight important women that are trailblazing the way in finance, venture, and entrepreneurial ecosystems that really are a driving force for our economy. Oftentimes, women are in positions where it's much more challenging for them to be able to get the same level of prestige, respect, money, and compensation as men do, and we're often left out of the rooms, and it's harder to get seats at the table. And so, in this series, we'll be highlighting the stories, the successes, but also the challenges of real women that have made the steps into finance, venture, and have started to trailblaze where it may have been harder for women to do so before. And so I'm excited to have with us today Galina Ozgur, who I've known for many years now and have seen her across transitions of career. She's currently with HL Ventures as a partner, recently promoted. And so Galina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Really excited.
Awesome. So as a start, I'd love if you could maybe talk a little bit about your career journey. And as we were talking earlier, you also took risks early on to leave home and start this adventure and to now where you're at a successful place. So I'd love if you could just talk a little bit about that pathway, as many women wanting to get into VC or similar positions can maybe learn or be inspired by where you've started.
Thank you, Frances. And I want to, first of all, say how much gratitude I have in my heart for even being able to sit across from you here today. You know better than anyone how long it takes to build in this industry, how long it takes to build up the courage for your voice to rise up the ranks. And so having this immense gratitude to even be acknowledged by someone who's a peer in the industry is really great. My career in venture was by no means linear. I often only half-jokingly say that I don't recommend that anyone else takes that path, quite honestly, simply because it didn't look like a very straightforward path to where I am today.
Yeah.
So right now I'm a general partner at a venture firm where I've been for the past 5 years. And when I was getting started, nothing pointed to that trajectory at all. When I started my career in venture, I was in my late 20s. I was a new immigrant to New York and to the United States. I had just found a role with one of the very first startup accelerators here in New York City called ERA. It still exists to this day, and it's a wonderful program run by an awesome team with a lot of knowledge. And I was extremely lucky to come across that organization, to be introduced, to not really have any sort of really warm connections, and yet I somehow came across it and I recognized a sign to ask for what felt so right. I remember going to this networking event and meeting somebody who was a mentor to the organization, and they asked me, what is it that you want to do? And I was really soul searching. I was so brand new. All I knew was that the city was full of opportunity, full of promise, but I didn't know what it looked like. I was sort of like a Jill of all trades, generalist. I felt like the world was my oyster, and yet I just didn't know which path to take. And they asked me this very simple question, and I said, I want to be in a room with smart people.
Yeah.
And they said, I know which room to introduce you to. And that was such a powerful thing to happen to me. And I don't know if it was the universe or God or whatever exists out there, I recognized that sign. And when I was introduced to ERA, they were looking for a program manager. They were looking for somebody to run their programs. They were brand new in the city. It was ERA and Techstars New York that was just getting started in 2011.
Early OG players.
Early OG players. And so I didn't even know what a program manager did, quite frankly. I don't think that anybody in the industry truly understood what that meant. And that role, of course, evolved in the industry over time, but it involved equal parts community building, equal parts making sure the trains were running on time, managing the expert network, doing all of that. And I looked at the job description and I said to myself, okay, I know about 30% of this, 70% of this is a learning opportunity and a very steep learning curve. And I'm just going to go for it. And little did I know that there was a line of people, interviewing for this role. And I think that what I was emboldened by was the fact that, ignorance is really bliss. I had no idea.
We don't know to be scared.
We don't know to
know
be
what the
scared.
stakes are. Yeah.
Exactly. So I wasn't really scared. I had nothing to lose. And I just had a lot of passion for entrepreneurship. It ran in my family. I was a go for it type of person. And I was very lucky to even be given a chance by the general partners. And at the time, it was 3 general partners and myself, essentially. So I was the first and only hire for a long time. And I learned how to run a program from soup to nuts. It was a steep learning curve. I didn't sleep for like 9 months straight. But I learned how to run a program, how to manage mentors, how to onboard companies, how to work with different personas and personalities. It was such a learning experience. You could not replicate that at any school, any university. And by the way, I was a linguistics major when I graduated. So it's not like I had a degree in finance or, really had any clue how to be a person or woman in finance. That was not the goal to begin with. It was just like, I went for something that felt would be joyful. That would be a learning experience, and I could never get that experience anywhere else. And that was my first job in New York. And then following that, I went on to be a GM at Grand Central Tech, which is now known as Company Ventures, which grew into a different brand and sort of this vertical campus for entrepreneurs. And then went on to be a consultant at 500 startups and a scout at a venture fund that was investing in the future of work and food. So I had multiple iterations to this role of community builder, investor, operator. And, it still didn't look like anything that, it didn't look like a story that an investor necessarily would write, right? Like graduating with a degree in finance, going to an investment bank, or following these very straightforward career lines. And it felt challenging. It felt like an uphill battle at times. It felt like, why am I still even doing this? It was often a crisis of faith because I did want to be an investor. I did want a seat at the table. And at times, and this is real talk, I think that the more that I was doing in community and operating and helping founders, I felt like I was moving away from the target that was becoming an investor. And little did I know that all of that was actually building me towards the investor that I've ultimately become.
The thing I love about your story, Galina, and that's amazing, is that a lot of women, I feel like, get into this mindset of, I need to know 100% of the job in order to even apply for it. Right? And along the way, you're like, well, I'll figure it out. You're a linguistics major. I was a music major. I never studied business either, so I can absolutely relate that people, and I think especially women, often feel like they need to check all of these boxes in order to even go after the opportunity. So where did that courage come from to just say, I'm going to figure it out? And yes, there are sleepless nights, and I'm sure tons of imposter syndrome. We all have it. But where did that courage come from for you to say, I don't have to have all of the perfect background. I can just go after the things that I want to pursue?
It's really interesting that you asked me that, because I think logically I do have an answer for that, but I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it came from the fact that when I was moving countries, moving to the United States, my ex-husband and I had barely a penny in our pockets. We sold everything that we had to move to New York and pursue a dream. And it was like, you know, you either make it or you come back home with nothing and you start from scratch. So shooting your shot was not just an option, it was the only option that I had. And like I said, you know, the feeling that you have nothing to lose and there's not like an army of people judging you for whatever happens to you, I think is really, really helpful. But it's interesting because I grew up in a household where perfectionism was a very, very strong trait.
Yes.
If you're not a straight A+ student, then why are you even studying this? Why are we even at this, right? And I grew up in a family where that sort of mentality drove a lot of my decisions. And yet when I had to release that personality and sort of do away with it because I had a different mission now, all of a sudden things changed. And don't get me wrong, perfectionism is something that stays with you it's a pattern that stays
For life.
for the duration of your life. But there are ways to, I think, transmute it into something else when you just simply have no choice but to do that. For your audience that's thinking about, well, how do I pursue roles that, you know, where I don't fully maybe feel like I can do the job? I think, you know, an honest approach to looking at a job description and being like, okay, what are the critical aspects of this role that I can do? Is it really 30% of all the things that are written out here? Or is it 30% of the critical things that are written out, right, in the JD? And I think you need to be honest with yourself. It's not always just shoot the shot for any job that's out there that you're excited about. Obviously, you need to be qualified. But you're absolutely correct that sometimes it's us women with imposter syndrome that look at the full totality of a job description and we're like, oh, there's just so much to learn. I feel unworthy. I feel unqualified. And then they just let that swarm of people who don't have the same imposter syndrome to take their position, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's equal parts awareness. Obviously, you need to be aware of what you're capable of, but also maybe just step into a position of, you know, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And
I love that mindset.
Yeah.
I love that mindset.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk a little bit about your recent promotion to making general partner, which is in the VC world in terms of the hierarchy, that is the top. So congratulations, A. B, how was that kind of transition into getting that promotion? You've been at the firm for 5 years. You know, did it feel like you made it, or do you still feel like you also have more to do now?
It's a great question. Thank you. Really excited about the promotion. It was a really big deal. It was a big deal for me, for my parents. It's a big accomplishment for someone who really wanted something like that to happen. But there's always more to do, and there's always more responsibility to take on. Absolutely, we can talk about that. Well, let me just start with this. How I came across HL Ventures and why that resonated deeply with my heart. I had done a lot of soul searching professionally in the 2 years leading up to meeting HL Ventures. In fact, I was traveling the world as a consultant, a scout. I was supporting a number of venture organizations cross-border. I was doing the stuff that I liked, but I ultimately wanted to come back to a home professionally where I would feel at peace, where I felt like my value was seen, and I just wasn't getting that. I was having a million of conversations with VC firms, and that just goes back to, the nonlinear career path.
Yeah.
And I still pursued I see the 30% of me knowing the job and the 70% of potentiality here. That was not always the case on the receiving end, right? The receiving end saw oftentimes, hey, this is a cookie cutter investor position. We only have one position open. And so you don't fit into our mold of things. Or if you fit into our mold of things, there was not a click energetically, which is really, really important, especially at this level of the game when you've worked with a number of people, you sort of know who you gel well with and what you want and what kind of joy you're looking to extract from the role. And I say joy because I really do believe that that's a core to a lot of successful roles. And so something just wasn't clicking for whatever reason. And so in the 2 years leading up to meeting the partners at HL, I was just professionally exhausted. I think I was mentally exhausting myself thinking about like, well, why isn't this thing working that I know that I'm so qualified for? I have the deal pipeline, I know a lot of people, I've been in the industry for a long time, like what gives? And I think on some sort of universal level, there was just a period where I needed to quiet my mind, and guess what happened? COVID hit.
Yeah.
And that's something that quieted my mind quite a bit, or rather shifted my attention to something completely different. And in that moment of stillness where New York City was at its quietest decibel level ever, I came across a role that was posted. And I knew a couple of people were connected into the organization. There was one page on the internet that had very little about the firm. And I don't know what piqued my curiosity, and I reached out, and it sort of had every element of what I'd been looking for. And I think what I hadn't mentioned yet is that, you know, all the roles that I played across multiple accelerator programs and my consulting roles, I was always very close to the founders. I was always very much in the trenches as they were building, and that is what kept me coming back into the accelerator world. But programmatically, I was just sort of tired of the cycles and repetition cycles. And so I was ready to join a venture firm, but I wanted to be close to the founders. And that's sort of like, that's very hard to find. Investors are often, you know, they look at their founders from the board seat position, they get their, you know, quarterly updates, but there's not that active engagement.
In the
trenches, collaboration, that just wasn't there. And what HL had was, they said that their core pillar is active engagement with founders. And I was like, hold on a second, that's the moment, that's a whole body yes.
Wow.
And I'm so glad I'm wearing this blazer because I'm getting chills.
Goosebumps.
Yes, absolutely goosebumps. And so it's you know, I reached out, I had a conversation, and it just felt like everything was in the right places at the right time. HL was pursuing investments and ventures that are good for the planet and our society, with a strong preference for diversely founded teams. They had active engagement as their core pillar, and that role was a partner track role. And we started talking about that at the very beginning. It was made very clear to me that this position would build up to seniority, to decision making, and it came with an investment committee seat off the bat.
Wow.
Which was very rare.
That doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen, especially for people who were sort of graduating from the platform community or, you know, VC platform community roles into, again, this was a platform role. I was a vice president of platform to begin with, but it came with an investment committee because the firm put a lot of emphasis on value add to the founders after the check cleared.
Yep.
And that was just like, it was worth the wait, right? It was worth the wait.
And that was worth all of the no's that you had before that to find the right one.
But hindsight is 20/20, right? You look back at that and you go, thank God there was that wait. Thank God that there was a period of the quieting of the mind. Otherwise, I would have missed that.
Yep, that's amazing. I would love to talk more about the firm itself. You know, you're investing in a lot of impact-focused startups, a lot of diversity. Would love to kind of maybe hear a bit more about some of the portfolio, maybe some of the exciting investments that you've been recently making, because right now impact is one of the most important things in the world.
Well, HL Ventures is, think of us as a company building ecosystem. So under the umbrella of HL Ventures, you have HL Studio, which is really our flagship organization that has been around since 2009. So that's a long time of co-building companies next to entrepreneurs. That's our earliest stage vehicle. It starts as early as day zero of company building and goes all the way to seed. Then there's our family of funds called City Rock Venture Partners, and City Rock invests in both our studio companies as they come up for their Series A, as well as outside of the studio pipeline, so that we're able to take on companies outside of the studio pipeline. They're all, however, united by the same spirit and mission, which is building at the nexus of impact and diversity. And essentially, the ventures that we pursue are the ones that are protecting and promoting people of the planet. So we have this interesting matrix, which is called the 4 Ps, and that's what we pursue. Daily active engagement is underlying everything that we do and is true for companies within the City Rock portfolio and the studio portfolio. It's just that, as you know, as companies grow, their questions and issues, it's not like they lose all the questions and the issues. They just transform into something else.
Different questions and issues.
Different questions and issues. And we want to be the kinds of investors on the cap table who are able to answer those questions, support, bring the right experts into the room, and give our companies that backing and support that goes beyond just the check.
Which is what founders really need.
Yes, they might resist the idea at first. And I've definitely met founders who have said, well, all I want is cash. And that's totally fine too.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding is that on every cap table, other investors who are check writers and who see check writing as their primary responsibility, which is absolutely no problem with that. I think that is the primary responsibility of an investor. They should want HL to be on the cap table.
Yep.
That's how I think about it. And the firm, we're on Fund 2 for our City Rock portfolio. The studio has been around since 2009. The types of companies that we have, the themes that we pursue are anything from protective industries like cybersecurity and all the way to healthcare, wellness, climate, energy.
Yeah.
Fintech for good, you name it. So it's a very broad mandate.
Great.
We think of ourselves as a generalist investor with a lens on, impact being baked into the business model or the diversity of the team, or both.
Fantastic. Well, as we come close to time, I have one last question. What would be your biggest advice for either your younger self or other younger women that are looking at having a similar career journey to you?
Grow a network of supporters around you early on. And, I didn't grow up with a lot of mentorship, or I didn't see mentorship culturally. That was just not a thing that was present in my life. And I got to benefit from it tremendously as a growing professional here in New York. And I think also not just growing a network of mentors, but also a network of peers who are going through a very similar journey and who will be your peers as you rise up in the industry, right? Hopefully, that you get to share deals with, that you get to share successes with, that you get to share insights about salaries and bonuses and carry and things like that. So not just mentors who are above you professionally in terms of rank, which is important.
Yes, of course.
But also having peers in your network, and get that underway as early as possible. And how you do that, the vehicle to that can be very different. Book clubs, hiking clubs, run clubs, very popular these days. I don't run, and I'm so devastated. I'm sure there's something to be done about that, but I haven't arrived at that decision what that is yet. But there's multiple ways to build a network these days, and that is fully available to people right now, which is not something that we had back in the day. I hate saying back in the day because that makes me sound very old, but there's multiple opportunities for young professionals or people wanting to work for startups to network now.
Yep.
And not benefiting from that is a huge miss.
Yep.
So if there's one piece of advice that I can give is that build a network and diversify it as much as possible. You're going to need it later.
I mean, at Quay, we believe a lot in networks. So with that, Galina, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your journey. And we'll see you all next time for our next Women in Blazers podcast.